Let's start from the beginning because if you want to understand why this trailer hit so differently, you have to go back and think about who Eloise Bridgerton actually is. Because this is not just any character getting a love story. This is the character who has spent 4 seasons being the loudest voice against everything Bridgerton is built on. She questioned the marriage mart. She questioned society's rules. She questioned why women had to shrink themselves down just to be chosen by a man who probably wasn't even worth choosing. Eloise was always the one standing slightly outside of every romantic storyline, looking in with this expression on her face that said, "I see exactly what's happening here and I want no part of it." And that's what made her so compelling to watch. She wasn't cold. She wasn't unfeeling. She was just awake in a world that kept asking women to fall asleep and smile while doing it. So when this trailer opens, and we see Eloise not just entertaining the idea of marriage, but actually moving toward it, actually looking like she might want this, it doesn't feel like a betrayal of her character. It feels like the most interesting question the show has ever asked. What does it take to change the mind of someone who has already made up their mind? What does it take to reach a person who built walls not out of fear but out of principle? And the trailer gives us a glimpse of that answer, and it comes in the form of someone who doesn't try to change her at all. That's the thing that immediately stands out when you watch it carefully. Every suitor Eloise has ever encountered in previous seasons tried to fit her into a shape she didn't belong in. They admired her intelligence just enough to mention it before immediately expecting her to set it aside. They liked the idea of a spirited woman, without actually being prepared for what that meant in real life. But whoever this season's love interest is, and we're going to get into that, the dynamic already feels completely different. There's no scene of him trying to convince her of anything. There's no moment where he looks uncomfortable with who she is. Instead, what you get is this quiet sense that he already knows her, that he's not surprised by anything she says or does, and that somehow that's exactly why she can't get him out of her head. That contrast alone is enough to make this one of the most anticipated seasons in the show's history, because we've never actually seen Eloise meet her match before. We've seen her run circles around people. We've seen her grow frustrated with people who couldn't keep up, but someone who doesn't need to keep up because he's already there? That's new territory for her and for us. Now, the trailer also does something really clever in how it frames Eloise's internal conflict, because it doesn't present this as a straightforward love story from the start. You can feel the tension in the way it's edited. There are moments where Eloise looks absolutely certain about something, and then moments where she looks like the ground has shifted beneath her feet and she's not sure how to find her footing again. And that push and pull is exactly what makes her arc so fascinating to watch unfold. Because Eloise has always known her own mind. That's been her defining trait for 4 seasons. She doesn't second-guess herself. She doesn't lose sleep over what other people think. But this season, the trailer is telling us that she has finally found the one thing she didn't have an answer for. And it's not marriage in general. It's this specific person that she genuinely does not know what to do with. That is such a specific and interesting kind of conflict for her character, because it's not coming from external pressure the way it always has before. It's not her mother hoping she'll finally settle down. It's not society making her feel like time is running out. It's entirely internal. It's Eloise sitting with her own feelings and realizing that the argument she's been making for years is suddenly a lot more complicated than she thought it was. And then there's the wedding dress moment, which is genuinely the centerpiece of this entire trailer and the image that has already broken the internet twice over. Seeing Eloise in a wedding dress is such a loaded visual because of everything we know about her. It's not just a dress, it's a symbol of everything she spent 4 seasons pushing against. And the way the trailer frames that moment is incredibly deliberate. She's not smiling the way you'd expect a bride to smile. She doesn't look like someone who has simply changed her mind about something small. She looks like someone who has gone on a long and difficult journey and arrived somewhere she never expected to be, and is still in the process of figuring out how she feels about being there. That expression on her face carries so much weight. And I think that's entirely intentional, because if Eloise Bridgerton is going to get married, then the show owes it to her character and to the audience to make sure that moment earns every bit of emotional complexity it deserves. And from what this trailer is showing us, it looks like they understood that assignment completely. What's also worth noting is the way the rest of the Bridgerton family is reacting throughout the trailer, because their energy tells us a lot about the tone of this season. There are moments of genuine joy, moments that feel like the family coming together in the way they always do. But there are also moments of tension, of quiet conversations happening in corners, of looks exchanged between characters that suggest not everything is going smoothly, and that layered family dynamic has always been one of Bridgerton's greatest strengths. The romance is never happening in a vacuum. It's always happening within the context of this large, complicated, loving, messy family, and Season 5 looks like it's leaning into that more than ever. Eloise's journey toward marriage isn't just her story, it's going to ripple through every relationship in that house, and the trailer is already teasing exactly how those ripples are going to play out before the season even begins. Now, let's talk about the love interest, because this is the conversation everyone is having right now. And honestly, it's the one that matters most when it comes to understanding why this season has the potential to be something really special. If you've read the Bridgerton books, then you already know that Eloise's story in the novels is connected to Philip Crane, the man who was previously engaged to her late friend Marina, and that detail alone carries so much emotional weight before the season even starts, because it means Eloise's love story is not starting from a clean slate. It's starting from grief, from history, from a connection that already existed in the most painful and complicated way possible. Philip isn't a stranger who walks into her life and sweeps her off her feet. He's someone tied to a chapter of her life that hurt her deeply, and that foundation makes everything that develops between them so much more layered and interesting than your typical Bridgerton romance, because there's already so much between them before a single romantic word is ever spoken. And the trailer is very aware of this. It doesn't try to skip over that history, or pretend it doesn't exist. You can feel the weight of Marina's memory hovering over every scene they share together. There's a guardedness in the way they interact at first, this careful distance that both of them are maintaining, not because they don't feel something, but because they both understand what it would mean to cross that line. Eloise spent years watching Marina navigate a world that wasn't kind to her. She witnessed things that most people in her social circle never had to confront. And Philip was at the center of all of that in ways that Eloise is still processing. So when the trailer shows them slowly moving closer to each other, when it shows that distance beginning to collapse despite everything, it feels genuinely earned in a way that only happens when a show has done the emotional groundwork properly. This isn't two people falling in love because the plot requires it. This is two people falling in love despite every reason they have not to, and that distinction makes all the difference. What also stands out about Philip as a character from what the trailer is showing us is that he brings something into Eloise's world that she has genuinely never encountered before, which is someone who doesn't need her to perform anything. Eloise has always been performing to some degree, not in a dishonest way, but in the way that someone performs when they know they're operating in a space that wasn't designed for them. She's always had to be a little louder, a little sharper, a little more certain of herself, just to be taken seriously in rooms that would have preferred she stayed quiet. But the dynamic the trailer is setting up between her and Philip doesn't have that energy at all. He's not a man of grand gestures or polished words. He's quiet and direct, and a little rough around the edges in the best possible way. And for Eloise, who has spent her entire life surrounded by people performing their way through society, someone that's straightforward is genuinely disarming. She doesn't know quite what to do with someone who simply says what he means and means what he says, and the trailer captures that confusion and fascination in a way that is already incredibly compelling to watch. There's also the matter of Philip's children, which the show is clearly going to explore this season, and which adds yet another layer of complexity to Eloise's arc that feels completely unique in the context of this series. Because falling in love with someone is one thing, but stepping into a ready-made family, becoming a presence in children's lives who have already experienced loss and instability, that's a completely different kind of emotional commitment. And for Eloise specifically, who has always been so focused on her own independence and her own sense of self, the idea of suddenly having to consider what her choices mean for people beyond herself is genuinely new territory. The trailer gives us a few glimpses of her interacting with the children, and what's immediately clear is that it doesn't come easily to her at first. There's an awkwardness there that feels completely honest and real, because why would it be easy? Eloise has never positioned herself as someone who dreamed of motherhood. She never added that to the list of things she wanted from life. So watching her slowly figure out how to exist in that space, and what it means to her, and what she's willing to become, is going to be one of the most quietly powerful threads running through this entire season. And I think that's what the writers understood when they decided to tell Eloise's story now rather than earlier in the series. Because if Season 5 had come sooner, if we hadn't spent all this time watching Eloise be exactly who she is without compromise, then this transformation would feel cheap. It would feel like the show was just checking a box, giving the outspoken feminist character her romance because every character has to get one eventually. But because we have 4 seasons of foundation, because we know exactly who Eloise is, and exactly what she believes, and exactly how fiercely she has held on to those beliefs, everything she's moving toward in this season carries real emotional stakes. Every step she takes toward Philip is a step that costs her something. Not because love is bad or marriage is wrong, but because for Eloise specifically, every step forward requires her to hold 2 truths at once: the truth of who she always said she was, and the truth of who she's becoming. And that tension is the beating heart of what this season looks like it's going to be. The trailer ends the second act of its storytelling with something that stopped me completely the first time I watched it. There's a moment, brief but absolutely devastating, where Eloise looks directly into the camera, or at least it feels that way, and for just a second you can see everything she's feeling without a single word being spoken. All the conflict, all the longing, all the quiet terror of wanting something you spent years telling yourself you didn't want. It's one of those trailer moments that reminds you what good acting actually looks like, and it sets up the back half of this season's story in a way that makes the wait feel almost unbearable. Because whatever is coming next for Eloise Bridgerton, the trailer has made one thing absolutely clear. This is not going to be a simple love story. It never could have been for her, and that is exactly why it's going to be so worth watching. Now let's shift gears a little, because as much as Eloise's story is the centerpiece of this season, the trailer makes it very clear that Season 5 is not operating in a single lane. There is a lot happening around the edges of her story, and some of it is just as interesting and just as emotionally charged as the main romance itself. And one of the things that immediately caught my attention while watching the trailer was how much screen time and emotional weight is being given to the storylines that are continuing from previous seasons rather than starting fresh. Because Bridgerton has always had this interesting challenge of balancing new love stories with the ongoing lives of couples and characters we've already followed. And sometimes it gets that balance right, and sometimes it doesn't. But from what this trailer is showing us, Season 5 looks like it might be the most successfully balanced season the show has ever attempted in that regard. Every returning character feels like they have a reason to be in the story, rather than just existing in the background as decoration. Penelope and Colin are back, and the trailer gives us enough of them to understand that their story is still very much in motion. Which makes sense because wrapping up a romance in one season and then completely disappearing those characters would feel deeply unsatisfying, especially for 2 people who had such a complex and emotional journey to get where they are. What the trailer is hinting at for them feels like the next natural chapter of their relationship, the part that comes after the love story ends and real life begins. And that is genuinely interesting territory for Bridgerton to explore, because the show has always been so focused on the pursuit of love that it rarely gets to spend time on what love looks like once it's settled. What do 2 people who fought that hard to be together look like when the fighting is over? What are the new challenges that come with building a life together, rather than just falling into each other? The glimpses we get of Penelope and Colin in this trailer suggest that the show is taking those questions seriously, and I think that's going to add a richness to this season that goes beyond just the main romance. But then there's Francesca and Michaela, and honestly, this is the thread I am most emotionally invested in after Eloise's story, because of everything that was set up in Season 4, and everything that was left deliberately unresolved. If you watched Part 2 of Season 4, then you already know that when Michaela left, it wasn't a clean exit. It was the kind of departure that leaves a mark. The kind where you can feel the unfinished conversation hanging in the air even after the door has closed. And the trailer for Season 5 is wasting absolutely no time in picking that back up. Michaela is back, and from the very first moment she appears on screen, the weight of everything between her and Francesca is immediately present. You don't need dialogue to understand it. You don't need anyone to explain what happened or why it matters. It's all right there in the way they exist in the same space together. This pull that neither of them seems to fully know how to handle, and neither of them seems able to walk away from either. What makes Francesca and Michaela's storyline so compelling in the context of this season is how different it feels from everything else happening around it. Eloise's story is loud in the best possible way. It's full of conflict and tension and big emotional moments that the trailer puts right in front of you. But Francesca's story has always operated on a quieter frequency, and that hasn't changed. The trailer handles her arc with this deliberate softness, these small moments that carry enormous meaning precisely because they're not being announced or amplified. a glance that lasts a second too long, a hesitation before someone speaks. The way two people position themselves in a room when they're pretending they're not completely aware of each other. Bridgerton is at its best when it trusts those small moments to do the heavy lifting. And from what this trailer is showing, Francesca and Michaela's story is being told entirely in that register. And I think for a lot of viewers, that is going to hit harder than anything else this season delivers. There's also something worth talking about regarding Lady Whistledown because the trailer does not ignore that thread, and I am so glad it doesn't, because the reveal at the end of Season 4 was one of the most genuinely exciting things the show has done in a long time. A new Whistledown, a new voice, a new set of motivations that we know absolutely nothing about yet. And Season 5 looks like it's going to use that mystery in a way that runs underneath everything else happening this season. Like a current you can feel, but can't quite see. There are moments in the trailer where characters react to something they've clearly just read, where the energy in a room shifts because of information that has just been released into society. And you can feel that Whistledown is operating again, but differently this time, with a different agenda. With a different edge. Penelope's version of Whistledown always had the sense of someone using power carefully, someone who understood the damage words could do, and mostly tried to avoid causing it even when she didn't always succeed. But whoever is writing now doesn't seem to be operating with that same caution. And the trailer is making sure you feel that difference, without ever making it completely explicit. It keeps you guessing in exactly the right way. And then there's Violet Bridgerton. Because I cannot talk about this trailer without talking about her, because she is one of the most quietly powerful presences in everything it shows us. After everything that happened with Marcus in Season 4, after that ending that left so many people frustrated and confused and wanting more for her, the trailer is giving us a Violet who looks different. Not broken, not defeated, but genuinely changed in a way that feels like growth rather than loss. There's a stillness to her in the scenes the trailer shows that wasn't quite there before. Like someone who has gone through something difficult and come out the other side with a clearer sense of what they actually want from the life they still have ahead of them. Whether that means Marcus comes back into the picture or whether Violet's Season 5 arc is about something else entirely, I honestly cannot tell from the trailer, and I think that ambiguity is completely intentional. But what I can tell is that whatever they have planned for her this season, it's going to matter. Because Violet Bridgerton has always been the emotional core of this family and this show, and Season 5 looks like it finally understands just how much story she still has left to tell. Now let's get into the bigger picture. Because after everything this trailer has shown us, after all the emotional setups and the returning characters and the new dynamics being introduced, there is a larger conversation worth having about what Season 5 actually means for Bridgerton as a show. Because we are no longer in the early seasons where everything felt fresh and new and the formula was still being established. We are deep into this series now. We are at the point where the show has to prove that it can evolve without losing what made it special in the first place. And honestly, the pressure on Season 5 is different from any season that came before it. Not just because Eloise is a fan favorite who people have strong feelings about, but because the choices made this season are going to determine the kind of show Bridgerton wants to be for the rest of its run. And this trailer, as exciting and emotional as it is also quietly making a statement about that direction. And I think it's a statement worth paying attention to. The thing that strikes me most when I watch this trailer from beginning to end is how much more grounded it feels compared to some of what we've seen in recent seasons. Bridgerton has always lived in this beautiful heightened world where everything is a little more romantic and a little more dramatic and a little more glamorous than reality. And that's part of what makes it so enjoyable to watch. But there have been moments in the show's history where that heightened quality tipped over into something that felt less emotionally honest, where the drama was happening on the surface rather than underneath it. This trailer doesn't